Can you pace yourself to a half marathon PB without a watch? That's the predicament I found myself in turning up to the start of the Great Run 2025 in Manchester when I looked down at my wrist and I saw, I don't have my watch. Runners in 2025 rely on running watches, Garmin's, Coros, whatever it is, whether it's to look at your heart rate, your pace, or anything else whilst you're on a run, to give you a gauge of how you're doing. Should you slow down? Should you speed up? Where are you? But if you don't have a watch, can you still do a good run? Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we're gonna find out. Although this isn't a video idea that I came up with and decided to do, I was just an idiot. I had to leave my house at like 6 AM to get to the start in Manchester. The start was at like 8:15. I did well with packing pretty much everything else, including a change of clothes because I was gonna have a shower in town afterwards. I just forgot my watch. Now, I don't have a watch that's too fancy really. It's a Garmin Venue, just literally the first generation. I think they're on 3 now. Don't even know when it came out. It was a hand-me-down from my stepsister, but it does what I need it to do. I can start and stop a run, I can see my heart rate, I can see what pace I'm running. So I wanted to try and break a 1:35 half marathon. My PB was 1 hour 40 that I got just in a random training run whilst I was training for the Barcelona Marathon. I did another video on that, so you can check that out here. I go into more detail about whether runner is useful, whether runner's worth the money basically. But considering I got 140 in a random training run, I thought 1:35 was a good goal. But you have to run pretty fast to get that. Pretty fast for me anyway. Not too long ago I did my first ever half marathon just on the streets around where I live, and I did it in 2 hours and 7 minutes, and I felt absolutely awful afterwards for days. After a couple of years of training, a few marathons, I hadn't really raced a proper half marathon, which is kind of crazy. People usually do it that way and then step up. I for some reason did it the other way. I did a 14-week marathon training plan with Runner, took 2 weeks off where I still did 1 or 2 easy runs, and then did another 7-week training plan with Runner to try and do the half marathon. Runner said that it predicted I could do a race between 1:32 and 1:36, so 1:35 is kind of in the middle of that. Considering Runner said for my marathon, where I got 3:32, it was like you can do between 3:21 and 3:28. So I missed that by a bit. I was like, okay, well maybe I'm going to miss the half marathon by a bit as well. It wanted me to try and run miles at 7:05 every mile, which meant I would have come in at like 1:33 or something. I don't know. It would have been well under 1:35. I think 1:35 is 7:15 a mile. But you end up running a little bit further distance in actual races, weaving in and out of people, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes the races themselves are just slightly longer anyway. And it was shaping up to be a pretty hot day. I got an email the day before from the race organizers saying that like it was going to be 22 degrees or something. Make sure you hydrate, make sure you put sun cream on, that kind of thing. When you get an email about that, you know it's going to be a hot day. But starting at 8:15 in the morning, that's not too bad. It should be okay at that time. Everything was ready, everything was prepared. I picked up my friend, dropped off our bags, all that kind of stuff. I got to the start line, no watch. What an idiot. So I had to go back to the old days of using my phone, Strava on my phone, to track it, but I'm not really gonna get my phone out all the time to check my pace. Is your phone as accurate as a watch? I don't even know. Maybe it is. It uses GPS and stuff, so maybe it is. But it's annoying just getting your phone out all the time, so I'm not going to pace myself on my phone. I did end up looking at my phone every now and then, maybe like 3 times during the race, just to see like if I was kind of on track. But the best way that I used for pacing was just using an actual pacer. I found the 1:35 pacer with big flag, and my idea was just stay near and around him. If I can't pace using my watch, I'll use him. I just put all my trust in him. So I started over the start line at basically the same time as him, I think a couple of seconds before. And I was like, I'm just going to stick with him. Hopefully he knows the course, so he knows maybe I might need to speed up or slow down at some points. But if I finish ahead of this guy, I've got my goal. And in some ways, that made the race and the pacing so much simpler. I didn't have to keep looking down at my watch. I didn't have to freak out about my heart rate possibly being artificially high because I was excited and my adrenaline was pumping for a race. All I had to do was stick by this guy and then maybe at the end burst past him, and I've beat the time. I've beat my goal. It doesn't get much more simple than that. I think we as runners look at our watches way too much and read into things way too much, when sometimes you just need a simple caveman attitude of, I see man, I run faster than man. But the first few miles started, and it started off at quite a pace. Looking back at my Strava and stuff, he was doing 7:05 miles, which is the goal that Runner wanted me to do anyway, but it's faster than I would have started if I was pacing myself. I wanted to go out at like 7:20, 7:25, and slowly ease into it and try and get faster in the race. But not having a watch meant that I couldn't do that. The first 5 or so miles of the Great Manchester Run is slightly uphill. You get to a point where you run out to Man City's ground. The whole course is kind of cool. There are some dead parts on it, but when you get back into the city, it's kind of cool. If you're a football fan, you go past Man City's ground and Man United's ground, which is kind of cool. And you get to a point near Man City's ground where you go over this big hill. You get the down bit, but it's like a bridge across the motorway. The uphill bit is pretty severely steep. And when you're running at like 7-minute miles, which again for me is pretty fast, running up that and trying to keep the same pace, it's pretty difficult. But I was with the pacer until about the 5th or 6th mile, when I don't know if I was just necessarily feeling good or it just happened. I slowly started to drift in front of him, which probably was quite good. Traditionally in the past in races, I tend to slow down towards the end, whether that's me going too fast, probably is that, or that's just the way that I race. I don't know. If I was fitter, maybe I could try and get faster at the end. Obviously that's ideal. In lots of training runs I do that, but in races you push yourself a little bit more than you would, so like you want to try and see how fast you can go. If I could hold on and go faster, obviously I would. I'm trying to get a PB. But I started to push past him. One of my friends that I was running with on the day, he was pacing someone else at a much slower time, which he did perfectly, by the way. But we saw each other across the way. He was like, yeah, come on, Will, which gave me a boost. I saw my fiance at 2 different points in the race as well, which also gave me a boost. But I wasn't running with the pacer, so I didn't know if my cadence, like my strides, my overall pace was too fast, or if I was slowing down. I kept checking over my shoulder to see where he was, and I did 1 mile. I think it was the 5th mile in 6 minutes 56 or something, so that is probably way too fast, but kind of cool that I did a mile in under 7.5. We kept going. We went around to Manchester United Stadium, which is cool to see, Old Trafford, but then there are some dead bits around like Trafford Industrial Estate near the Imperial War Museum, where there's not much going on, and that is where I started to falter and slow down. I feel like it was getting hot. The sun was starting to come out. When the sun was behind clouds, it seemed quite cold. It felt like actually cold. But when the sun was out, it felt like actually warm, and there was no in between. But now 8-9 miles in or something, it was pretty hot. I was beginning to flag. I was slowly getting slower. So my miles were going from like 7:05 to 7:10 to 7:15, that kind of thing. So still pretty fast and like within the range that I wanted, but going down instead of going up, which is ideally what we want. Going back into Manchester though, I could see the Deansgate Towers. I was like, right, the finish line is right by those towers pretty much. If I can see them, I can run to them. That was my mindset. And I was beginning to flag. I checked the halfway point actually. This is going back in time a bit, I forgot to mention it. Halfway it was 47 minutes dead on, which meant if I did the same thing twice, I would have got a 1:34. I was really beginning to flag near the end. I genuinely think if the race was much longer, I would have either had to have stopped or really slowed down. My legs were starting to feel so heavy. There was a point that went through my brain, was like I watched a video of some guy, like his legs just completely collapsed and went to jelly. There was a point in my brain where I was like, that could happen right now. But sometimes in races, I get to the point where I'm not even that bothered about pacing. I just want to get to the end. And that was what the last probably 2 miles of this race were. I'd paced it pretty well so far though, without a watch. I couldn't see the flag guy pacer behind me, so I was like, right, just gotta get to the end. If not now, when? I've done so well up to this point, I don't want to let it slip, like Steven Gerrard said. But this is the point in the race where the support gets so much louder, there are more people, it makes it almost impossible to stop, which is great. That is exactly what I needed. Coming around the corner, you see like this cream and red bridge, and then you know that's the last turn and you run up to the finish line. It's slightly inclined, that last bit, but you don't notice it too much because it is the last bit. I managed to, I think, run a little bit faster, I'm not too sure, and then obviously because I wasn't using my watch, I forgot to press stop on the Strava for a little while, so I don't know exactly how fast I was running then, but I'm pretty sure it was faster than my race pace, which is good. I did have a last sprint in me. But I looked behind my shoulder, the 1:35 pacer was comfortably in the distance. I ran over the finish line, my fiance was there screaming, it was epic, and some other guy kind of collapsed onto me, and we held each other arm in arm. I was like, dude, we did it! He was like, yeah, dude, we did it! epic, epic moment. I was absolutely gassed. I don't think I could have given much more, to be honest, which is good because sometimes in races you look back and you're like, yeah, I could have given a bit more there. Genuinely, I don't think I could. I went over the finish line in 1 hour, 34 minutes and 17 seconds. Absolutely smashing my goal, a goal that genuinely going into the day was 50-50. I didn't know whether I was going to get that or not. I would have been happy with somewhere between 135 and 140 because that still would have been a PB and it's still a 1:3 something, which is an awesome time for a half marathon. I'm super pleased with it, I'm super chuffed with it, and I managed to do it without a running watch. Maybe that's the strat. Maybe that's what we do in the future. Running watches are fantastic for training and stuff because obviously otherwise you'd have no idea how fast you were going. But using paces for actual races could be the play. I've been out on a few training runs as well, to be fair, without my watch, just because sometimes you find you're looking at it far too much. Sometimes I enjoy those runs more, and sometimes I even end up going faster because I'm not looking at my watch and thinking, I'm just gonna hold back there a little bit. My heart rate's a little bit too high. I'm just gonna chill. You just go off feel, and that's what our ancestors used to do. No, it could be the play. Let me know in the comments if you've done a race without a watch before, or just gone on a run recently without your watch. How did that make you feel? I quite like it. Might do more of it. Obviously, there's a place for these things. They're absolutely amazing. They're great. But Manchester Great Run 2025. Did I get my medal? I did. Manchester Great Run 2025. Completed it without a watch. See you on my next one.